In this video, we'll be covering Gardnerella vaginalis, the cause of bacterial vaginosis. One thing you'll expect to encounter when you come face to face with bacterial vaginosis is a fishy odor. So we are going to base our scene around an urban fish market called the Fish Garden. Garden is, of course, to remind you that the story is about Gardnerella. So let's start drawing out this fish market. And the story for this scene is that some fish have been disappearing from the market, and a detective has been called to the scene to figure out what's been going on. So let's draw this detective at the table with missing fish. This detective doesn't really signify anything on his own, he's just a crucial component to the scene. Let's start with the basics. You should first know that Gardnerella is a gram-variable rod, meaning it can stain as either gram-positive or gram-negative. To help you remember this, we're going to put purple and red graffiti on the wall behind the market. This purple and red, of course, have been our color motifs for gram-positive and gram-negative. So since both colors are present, we know it's gram-variable. Before going into the symptoms of bacterial vaginosis, let's talk about the mechanism, which is something really important because it's often tested to see if you understand how alterations in normal vaginal flora can lead to Gardnerella infection. So the normal vaginal flora consists of primarily lactobacilli, so that's the majority. And there is a minority of anaerobic gram-negatives. If this balance starts getting out of whack, and there's an increase in the anaerobic flora, this overgrowth decreases the amount of lactobacilli in the flora, and this creates an environment more suitable for the growth of Gardnerella. This actually fits quite nicely into our story because the reason the fish have been disappearing is because the stall next to the fish stand has an overgrowth of a certain plant, the Venus flytrap, which has been eating all of the fish. And this overgrowth of plants should help you remember the mechanism behind the establishment of a bacterial vaginosis infection. Bacterial overgrowth that disrupts the normal flora. Now we'll go ahead and talk about the symptoms of bacterial vaginosis. First, and most importantly, there's this thin, grayish-white, malodorous or fishy discharge from the vagina. To remember this, we're going to draw this gray discharge overflowing out of these Venus flytraps. You may notice that these flytraps look kind of like a vulva, especially the one on the bottom right. And this oozing grayish-white discharge coming out of the vulva-like Venus flytrap should solidify this association. Sorry for the visual. Alright, now that you know that the primary symptom is this grayish-white discharge, let's talk about more diagnostic features. The discharge caused by bacterial vaginosis should have a pH that is above 4.5 and is usually between 5 and 6.5. This may seem trivial, but can actually be quite useful when distinguishing between different types of vaginal discharges. To help you remember this, we're going to put a sign here for the price of the Venus flytraps. We're going to write P 4.5 and up, or price $4.50 and up. So I admit that the 450 isn't a super memorable number, but the fact that it's a price tag should be. And when you think about how prices are normally written on bins like this, it always says such and such price and up. You would never see $4.50 and below, because then they're not advertising the lowest price. Know what I mean? So if you remember 450, then that's great. But if you don't freak out. Just remember that the prices are always written X dollars and up. And you'll remember that it's a higher pH. So if you want to make the fishy odor really angry, you treat it with a 10% KOH prep. And smelling this pungent odor is considered a positive whiff test. And the name actually describes the test pretty well. So to help you remember this, we're going to draw a little detective dog whiffing the discharge on the floor. Another diagnostic tool is the microscopic exam, which can easily help with differentiation. A wet mount preparation of bacterial vaginosis discharge shows these characteristic clue cells, which are epithelial cells diffusely coated with bacteria. So to help you remember this, we're going to put fluid on the sheets here where the fish went missing. And we're making these stains look like how actual clue cells look under the microscope. Notice these little tiny blue spots on this larger spot? These represent the diffuse coating of bacteria on epithelial cells. And of course, in the story, these clue cells are the detective's clues to help him solve the case. And that should also make it easy for you to remember that they're called clue cells. So I recommend looking at pictures of clue cells and familiarize yourself with them. I think our representation is actually pretty good, but it would serve you well to look up the real pictures on your own. They're a pretty high yield image. Finally, let's talk about the treatment of bacterial vaginosis. The one treatment you should be familiar with for step 1 is metronidazole. To remember this, we're going to use our recurring metronidazole symbol, the metro train. And do you remember what other story this appeared in? That's right, the Clostridia difficile story. And it'll appear again a couple more times in the Protozoa chapter. And that's really it for Gardnerella vaginalis. And I hope you learn it so well that bacterial vaginosis is the first thing you think of next time you have fish tacos. You're welcome for that.